190, 230.
American 11 Boston, center, roger, climb, maintain level 280. American 11, turn 20 degrees right.
20 right, American 11.
American 11, climb, maintain level 350. American 11, climb, maintain level 350. American 11 Boston. Earth 7, Mike Lima, how do you hear?
Mike Lima has you loud and clear.
American 11 Boston. American 11, the American on the frequency, how do you hear me?
This is Adam.
This is Boston. I turned American 20 left and I was going to climb him. He will not respond to me now. At all.
Looks like he's turning right.
Yeah, I turned him 20 right.
Oh, okay.
And he's only going to, I think, 29.
Okay.
Well,
sure, that's fine.
But
he
I'm
won't
not
answer
talking to
you.
him.
He's Nardo. Roger.
Right.
Thanks.
Earth 7, Mike Lima, descend at Palace discretion, maintain level 240.
PD on 240 will begin down through us, Mike Lima.
American 11 Boston. American 11, if you hear Boston Center, ident.
Boston 683, flight level 210, climb 230.
Cardinal 683 Boston Center, roger, climb, maintain level 310.
Climb, maintain flight level 310.
American 11, if you hear Boston Center, ident please or acknowledge.
Right.
American 11, if you hear Boston Center, recontact Boston Center on 127.82. That's American 11, 127.82.
Athens is Rockdale. A couple things. Point out north and west of Rockdale is MCM 986.
Put out approved.
Hey, also, are you trying to get through the company on the American or anything?
We're trying everything here.
Is he really got no transponder screwed up or what?
It appears that way.
No kidding. All right.
American Airlines emergency line, please state your emergency.
Hey, this is Nitty at American Airlines calling. I am monitoring a call in which Flight 11, the flight attendant is advising our reps that the pilot, everyone's been stabbed.
Flight 11?
Yep. They can't get into the cockpit is what I'm hearing.
Okay, who's this I'm talking to?
Excuse me, this is Nitty at American Airlines at the Raleigh Reservation Center. I'm the operations specialist on duty.
And I'm sorry, what was your name again?
Nydia.
Nydia. And what's your last name?
Gonzalez, Gonzalez.
Raleigh Reservations. Okay, now
I've got
when you...
the flight attendant on the line with one of our agents.
Okay. And she's calling how?
Through reservation. I can go in on the line and ask the flight attendant questions.
Okay, I'm assuming they've declared an emergency. Let me get ATC on here. Stand by.
Gotten any contact with anybody? Okay, I'm still on with security, okay, Betty? You're doing a great job. Just stay calm, okay? We are, absolutely.
Okay, we're contacting the flight crew now. We're also contacting ATC.
Okay.
Anything else from this flight attendant?
So far what I've got, the number 5 flight attendant's been stabbed, but she seems to be breathing. The number 1 seems to be stabbed pretty badly, and she's lying down on the floor. They don't know whether she's conscious or not. The other flight attendants are in the back, and that's as far as I know. It seems like the passengers in this coach might not be aware of what's going on right now.
These 2 passengers were from first class?
Okay, hold on. Hey, Betty? Do you know any information as far as the gentlemen that are in the cockpit with the pilots? Were they from first class? They were sitting in 2A and B.
Okay.
They are in the cockpit with the pilots.
Who's helping them? Is there a doctor on board?
Is there a doctor on board, Betty, that's assisting you guys? You don't have any doctors on board, okay. So you've gotten all the first-class passengers out of first class?
Have they taken everyone out of first class?
Yeah, she's just saying that they're in coach. What's going on, honey? Okay, the aircraft is erratic again. Driving very erratically. She did say that all the first-class passengers have been moved back to coach. So first class, the cabin is empty. What's going on your end, Craig?
We contacted air traffic control. They are going to handle this as a confirmed hijacking, so they're moving all the traffic out of this aircraft's way.
Okay.
He turned his transponder off, so we don't have a definitive altitude for him. We're just going by, they seem to think that they have him on a primary radar. They seem to think that he is descending.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, Lydia?
Yes, dear, I'm here.
Okay. I have the dispatcher currently taking the current fuel on board, and we're going to run some profiles to see exactly what his endurance is.
Okay. She doesn't have an idea who the other passenger might be in first. Apparently they might have spread something, so it's they're having a hard time breathing or getting in that area. What's going on, Betty? Betty, talk to me. Betty, are you there? Betty? Do you think you lost her? Okay, so we'll stay open.
And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Cold War Radio live on our home base, WAAR. We are America Radio, your number one source for streaming political and government talk anywhere. I'm Hutch Bailey Jr., deep down in the bunker in the city of Pittsburgh, and let's welcome Radio Norway. Good evening. Come in, please.
Good evening, Hutch. It's election night in Norway, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But what a chilling clip you played there.
Absolutely. And ladies and gentlemen, that clip obviously was from American 11, the first plane that crashed into the World Trade Center. And you heard it edited. I edited that down to 6 minutes from about 20. There were long pauses in between most of those radio transmissions, but for radio purposes, I edited it down. And obviously, you caught the last tail end of that flight. Follow me on Spreaker, ladies and gentlemen. Like the Facebook page, facebook.com/Cold War Radio, 2 A's in war. You're going to especially want to go to the Facebook page and like it if you haven't already, because all of the tapes in their entirety are on the webpage. Just look for 508, my comments. But there's several of them in their entirety. You can catch the show on Blueberry, Roku, YouTube. Cold War Radio is a proud iHeartRadio program. You can get the Cold War Radio app free in your app store and follow along and jump in the chat room. It's the place to be on Cold War Radio nights. The email is hutch@steelcityresistance.com, and the Cold War Radio patron hotline is 412-567-1460. We're going to want to hear from some of you tonight. We want to know your feelings, and we'll get into that. The chat room is up on Spreaker. Again, like I say, that's the place to be, and you can get there. Go to steelcityresistance.com. There's links to the Spreaker broadcast. You can catch the show notes links there, which you're going to need them tonight too, because we've got a plethora of information and only an hour of time. And you can also become a Cold War Radio patron there. If you want to send mail, it's Hutch Bailey Jr., P.O. Box 96022, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania 15226. And I didn't realize that post office boxes get junk mail, but they do, ladies and gentlemen. Again, that was audio of the back and forth between the air traffic controllers and Flight 11. We've got a bunch of other audio clips for you, but again, like I said, they're in their entirety on the Facebook page. There's something that really disturbs me, and obviously tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk about 9/11 because it is 9/11. But first, why don't you give a brief overview of what's going on in electoral politics in Norway, sir?
It's been, I don't know if it's been a really nail-biter tonight, but there's been some changes in Norwegian politics. It ended up, I would say, on a positive note with 89 representatives for the conservative bloc, if you'd like, and 80 representatives for the socialist or the leftist bloc. And we have a little more difficult system in Norway because we are 9 parties that are represented in the parliament, and on the left side, the big changes were that the Arbeiderpartiet, which is the Socialist Democratic Party, went back quite a lot, and actually the Radical party, which is only known by the name Red, actually gained quite a few points, up to 6.3, and that's 3.1 up since the last time. And also,
now that's radical leftists.
That is the Marxist-Leninist Mao camp.
Gotcha.
So they're on 6.3% in Norway now, and the Socialist Leftist Party, the SV Party, is also up by 3% to 9.3. So and the third one is the biggest on the left, which is the Socialist Democrats with 28.4%. But also the Environment Party, the Green as they call themselves, they gained a little bit in this election, which is absolutely beyond me, because there is no head and tail in their policy. It's destroy the world, commit suicide, and we'll have a greener future kind of thing. So absolutely astonished. On the right-hand side, the Conservatives became the largest party with well over 26%, which is not that bad, because they've been in government with the prime minister now for 4 years, and has only dropped a few percent. So I think they made it pretty well with my party, which is the Progress Party, that gained 28 candidates. So all in all, I think it's been a good election night, considering the wear and tear that a government takes on the sitting party. I think the Progress Party and the Conservative Party did really well.
Do you think that there'll be a little more resistance to the Islamization of Europe as far as Norway goes with the government changing, or it's not enough?
No, it's going to go in the opposite direction, because along with the Progress Party, which is the which is the pro-immigration, the pro-integration, anti-immigration party, which it's the only party, and they have 28 of the 89 28 of the 89 representatives out of 169 in total, and they now have to share the stage with the Christian Folks Party, which is nothing what you would expect. They are really pro-Islam, pro-immigration, just horrible, and also the liberal, which is called Venstre, which literally means left in Norway. They have been a conservative party, but they've really turned away from that the last couple of decades. They used to be a really solid district rural party, but they are totally pro Islamization and immigration, and it's and you know, these four parties, the Conservatives, the Progressives, the Christians, and Venstre, they have to now they have to start negotiations to make a very, very fragile coalition, because the Progress Party, they are really anti-immigration, which I think is really good, because we have huge economic problems in Norway, and we simply can't take anymore. And they have to balance against the Christian Folk Party and Venstre, which is going to be a really, really fragile easily attackable bridge.
Well, on a good note, on the second reading of the Brexit deal, it looks like the British want their country, so they won on the second reading of the exit vote. So that's a good thing I heard tonight.
Yeah, well, I guess you could say the positive thing about this is that we'll have 4 more years of fiscally conservative policies. But, it's not really that fiscally conservative because we have had to take a lot of resources from our so-called oil fund or pension fund, which is the surplus from the oil production. We have had to spend a lot of that the past 4 years simply to patch up the holes in this welfare society that the socialists have created in the better part of the 20th century.
And that's where it always fails, is when you run out of other people's money. But let's get to the absolutely imperative program that we had to bring today at Norway's suggesting a month ago. This is 9/11, and the question that we have for the audience tonight is, how do you remember 9/11, 2001, or even do you, if you're not old enough to have been there? Give us a call, 412-567-1460. I'm a little disturbed, Norway. I think that H.R. McMaster, how do I know? I'm not there, but something has gotten in to the administration, and I don't know enough details as to why it did, but it bothers me nonetheless. President Trump, Vice President Pence, Secretary Mattis, and Attorney General Jeff Sessions all failed to name radical Islamic terrorism today in their speeches, and that's not a coincidence.
No, it's not a coincidence, and we'll get to that a little further on in the program. But first, we'll do a short historical overview, because 9/11, Hutch, that is not just an arbitrary date, is it?
No, it absolutely isn't, and there's plenty of evidence behind that that we have for you. I wanted to, the first thing I wanted to do, though, I wanted to get to something that I didn't realize was as bad as it is. And I was talking to a retired military officer today, and the subject matter is, were the Saudis behind the attacks of at least 9/11, 2001? And I was talking to this individual of one of our branches of the military, retired, just casually talking about this and the Saudis and how they've gotten away with this. And I can't remember if he asked me or I mentioned that I think this is going to come out. I think finally this has to come out. But then he looked at me and said, Kennedy's assassination hasn't even come out yet. And I thought about that for a minute, and I started realizing how dangerous President Trump is to these people. Because as we're going to get into here in a minute about the Saudis, when you look at this and you realize how many people, in both cases, in the Kennedy assassination, but not as much as this one, how many people had to lie, Norway, for this to occur, it boggles the mind, and it starts to make you realize how dangerous to this phony setup we have the president really is.
Absolutely, and it's a very good point. The redacted or secret parts of John F. Kennedy's assassination is not released yet, so we don't know what the deep state knows.
Right, and I think that's why they're terrified. I think that's why they're so scared of a guy like the president. Because that was my next comment to this guy was, yeah, but you know what? Trump has a way, and his eyes lit up, and he said, yeah, he would have no problem bringing this out in the open. So let's just pray that this does get out, because this rearranges everything. This is an article in American Thinker by James Lewis, and he goes on to tell you about how on September 9th, 2017, Paul Sperry of the New York Post dropped the biggest headline hint so far that, yes, the Saudis plotted, trained, funded, ordered, and covered up the assault on America on 9/11/2001. The headline doesn't come out and actually say that they did this, the greatest anti-American civilian atrocity 16 years ago. It just says that the Saudis allegedly funded a dry run of the 9/11 attack 2 years before it was actually executed. But by now, we know so much support. We have so much supportive evidence that we might as well tell the whole truth. 2 years before the airliner attacks, the Saudi embassy paid for 2 Saudi nationals living undercover in the U.S. as students to fly from Phoenix to Washington in a dry run for the 9/11 attacks, alleges the amended complaint filed on behalf of the families of some 1,400 victims who died in a terrorist attack 16 years ago. Now, I have to say that you need to go to the show notes links and check this out, because I read this whole thing, and it is absolutely stunning. It's a must-read, but it goes into a lot of historical things about tribal warfare and things like that, which is what Saudi Arabia is. It's a coalition of tribes. But what really happened on 9/11? The attackers commandeered civilian passenger planes and suicidally flew them into the Twin Towers of Manhattan. A third passenger plane was flown into the Pentagon in D.C., and a fourth crashed when its passengers heroically rebelled against the throat-cutting murderers and crashed in Pennsylvania. These assaults count as the biggest enemy attack on American civilians in history. Now, this is an important part right here. In the Geneva Conventions, the politically motivated murder of civilians is treated even more seriously than surprise attacks on the members of a military in uniform. And here's a couple of the most likely hypotheses based on the evidence, but we will not know the full truth until the 28 censored pages from the 9/11 report are published. The U.S. media, which evidently colluded in the greatest national security cover-up, must now tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. If any media outlet fails to cover this, American patriots must simply boycott them and their owners and sponsors. This is a question of national life or death, Norway. I mean, you look at who did the cover-up.
Yeah, who did a cover-up when the 9/11 attacks took place? None of our presidents, nor our enormous deep state government, nor any major news outlets told the truth. As a result, even today, most Americans know little except that fake Islamophobia is a terrible thing. Americans need to learn the truth, and we must know the truth to understand that jihad war that was launched against us on that second day of infamy, the first day, of course, being Pearl Harbor. No nation can protect itself against future dangers if it only learns lies about previous acts of national aggression.
And I mean, that's so true. But you got to ask yourself then, who ran the cover-up and why? The 9/11 attack was covered up. 9/11 was not the first attack by Al-Qaeda and its militant networks against the Twin Towers. There was an amazingly similar truck bomb attack in 1993 by the same network, and some of the perps were caught and sentenced to jail terms. Now, a friend of the show, a guy that's been on here, Andrew McCarthy of the National Review, was the federal prosecutor in that case and has written extensively about it. McCarthy has been one of the truth tellers in a time of shameful lies and cover-ups. Bill and Hillary Clinton knew about the failed truck bomb attack on the Twin Towers in '93. We know that Bill was offered bin Laden's head on a platter by 4 different Arab regimes in secret, and that he refused 4 times. There's no question that the Clintons knew about the danger ahead of time and utterly failed to pursue bin Laden's Al-Qaeda network when there was still time to knock them out. That abject cowardice is interpreted in war theologies like Desert Islam as a plain and obvious sign of weakness, and it always increases the chance of more attacks. This is elementary logic about hyper-aggressive regimes, Norway.
Yeah, and that is a brilliant point pertaining to Islam. They constantly look for weaknesses, and if you show weakness, they attack and they attack and they attack and they'll keep attacking. The only thing they understand is brute force. And it's that simple. When you have read the Quran, the Hadith, the Sirah, when you have studied it, if you Americans don't study this ideology, this political radical ideology, if you don't study this now, your future is lost, because in the wings in America now, you see massive funding by the Saudis, the Iranians. They're funding universities, especially the Saudis. They have Saudis, the Kuwaitis. They have huge money invested in bringing down America, and they don't think 4 years ahead. They don't think from now until the next election. They think 40 years ahead, 400 years ahead.
The Ummah.
The Ummah, exactly.
And he's exactly right. You have to study this. This is something. It's not a luxury that we have anymore to just pretend that this is just something that's just going to go away. It's not going to go away. If you look throughout history, these people have been a fly in the ointment of humanity ever since their inception.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you have children or grandchildren, learn about Islam. Sit down, ask them what they learn in school about this, because that is the gist of it. If you don't understand what the coming generation is about, you will lose this on the floor, big time.
And you have to talk to your kids. What he said is so true right now. You will be stunned what they are teaching your children and grandchildren about Islam, and more importantly, what they're not teaching them. And your kids will listen to you. Trust me. I've done this with all three of mine. You sit them down, you let them read it, and then you tell them, now you tell me, what do you think? It works, because it's clear and it's true. And we have people inside this country. Let's listen to what the Clintons did. Instead of revealing and mobilizing American public opinion against a clear and obvious danger, the Clintons made money off it. The fact that Huma Abedin has become Hillary's closest friend and assistant over the last 20 years, and that Huma comes from a Muslim Brotherhood family that runs a charity in the UK to promote jihad, makes Huma, Hillary, and Bill criminally liable. They owe the American people an explanation, and instead they have been taking tens of millions of dollars from known jihad sources. We don't know whether or not Bush and Cheney knew about the danger of attack ahead of time, but it seems unlikely. The assault happened early in the Bush II administration, possibly before they were warned. We have to understand that after 9/11, every major intelligence agency in the world must have known who the perps were. Former USMC Commandant Jim Mattis has often said that there is always treachery. It's a basic rule in his lifelong teachings. The fact that Mattis is now Secretary of Defense shows where Trump is moving, against jihad. Finally, after decades of Democrat and Rhino betrayal of the American people in their greatest danger, and this is why I was so concerned at the top of the program about Mattis and everybody else abandoning this. But I'm going to keep it in my heart that they know more than I do.
Yeah, well, we'll go back to story 2 in a bit, but Jim Mattis, he's come out and said that Islam is a religion of peace.
I know.
And the minute someone drops that ball, you know exactly what they are. They are either they're deceiving you, or they're ignorant,
or they're dimmies.
Now, they're dimmies. Well, dimmies can actually sort in both categories.
True.
Usually, dimmies are people that are doing Islam's bidding without being Muslims themselves, but that means that they have to pay the jizya, which is
the tax.
50% tax. at least 50% tax. They cannot. You cannot fix your house without permission. If you meet a believer Muslim in the street, you have to step off the sidewalk and
bow your head,
bow your head, etc. So and this is what we see. This cowtelling in American and European media, in American European academia. And especially in European American politics, it's sickening when you have studied this ideology.
It is. Now let's go back to New York, and when we come back, we'll talk about the long history of September 11 Muslim atrocities.
Manhattan.
Italian 1.
We just had a plane crash into upper floor of the World Trade Center, transmit a second alarm, and start relocating companies into the area.
10-4, Battalion 1.
Battalion 1 is also sending the whole confinement on this box to that area, okay? Engine 6 to Manhattan, okay?
Engine 6.
The World Trade Center, tower number 1 is on fire. The whole outside of the building was just a huge explosion.
10-4, all companies stand by at this time.
There's been a second alarm on that box immediately.
10-4.
Engine 1 to Manhattan.
Engine 1-0.
Engine 1 World Trade Center, 1060. Send every available ambulance, everything you got to the World Trade Center now.
10-4, 1060 has been transmitted for the World Trade Center. 1060 for the World Trade Center.
3 truck to Manhattan.
3 truck.
Civilian reports from up here, a plane just crashed into the World Trade Center for your information.
10-4, okay.
Trucks available. Battalion 1 to Manhattan.
Battalion 1, okay.
We have a number of floors on fire. It looked like the plane was aiming towards the building. Transmit a third alarm. We'll have the staging area at Vesey and West Street. Have the third alarm assignment go into that area. Second alarm assignment report to the building, okay?
Alright, 10-4, second alarm assignment, report to the World Trade Center. Second alarm assignment, report to 1 World Trade Center.
Engine 1 to Manhattan.
Engine 1, okay.
It appears an airplane crashed into the World Trade Center.
10-4, third alarm's been transmitted box 8087. Third alarm transmitted box 8087 for 1 World Trade Center.
Squad 1-8 to Manhattan, Jay.
Squad 1-8, okay.
It's the 1st Battalion transmitted that it looked like it was intentional. Inform all units going into the box. It could be a terrorist attack.
10-4, all units be advised.
Alright, lot of attention to Manhattan.
Proceed.
Lot of attention to Manhattan, just to know you know, this is confirmed. This is confirmed.
This is confirmed, 10-4, okay.
Engine 1 to Manhattan.
Engine 1-0, go.
Roll every available ambulance you got to this position.
10-4, okay.
Rescue 2 to Manhattan.
Rescue 2, go.
Are we assigned to your box in Lower Manhattan, Ken?
Rescue 2, stand by.
Division 1 to Manhattan, okay.
Division 1, okay.
No responding, have another rescue spot out.
10-4, Rescue 2, start out to box 8087, okay.
Rescue 2's responding, okay.
Squad 1-8 to Manhattan, okay.
Division 1 to Manhattan, what do you have in on this? Division 1 to Manhattan. Bring 1 to Manhattan.
Division 1, go with your message.
What's the response to some of this right now?
Division 1, you now have a third alarm assignment to the box, okay.
Division 1, 10-4, that's confirmed. We have fire on several floors, the upper floors of the World Trade Center.
10-4, Division 1.
Hey, I got no silence.
Squad 1-8 to Manhattan, okay.
4 Bravo to Manhattan.
4 Bravo, proceed.
4 Bravo is responding to the World Trade Center.
10-4, okay.
40 Adams to Manhattan.
40 Adams.
On the way to the Trade Center.
10-4. Third alarm
alarm has been transmitted, box 8087, number 1 World Trade Center.
5-5 to Manhattan. Engine 5-5 to Manhattan.
Engine 5-5.
You please have ambulances respond to West Street. We have several injured people on West Street here.
10-4 into 5.
Battalion 1 to Manhattan, Jay. 1-4 to Manhattan. Battalion 1 to Manhattan, Jay. Illinois, Charlie. 3 truck to Manhattan.
3 truck up.
We're at a house in West Broadway. We can see this from here. We've been directed by numerous civilians. You want us to take this in or you want us to stand fast?
Take that in, Kay.
Truck was Brooklyn to Manhattan.
Brooklyn, go.
Manhattan, for your information, Brooklyn is transmitting a box at the Brooklyn end of the battery.
All right, so there's a little bit of it, ladies and gentlemen. There's just so much that I urge you to go to the Facebook page and like it if you haven't, and check the tapes in their entirety. It's just not conducive on a 1-hour show to do this. But Norway, let's talk about the long history of September 11th and the Muzzies. And this is from WorldNet Daily even. I mean, Farah.
Yeah, well, it's, I mean, people here, I know people in the chat room, they are really bright, they're really well read, they're educated about this, but I know we have a lot of podcast listeners who are on the road and working and listening to this in between. But I urge you to learn the basic tenets of Islam. Check out Dr. Bill Warner. He's written some excellent little books or booklets. I mean, they cost like $9 a piece or something like that on Amazon, and they are great reading material. And you can do it in steps. You can advance if you feel the urge for it. But it's got a lot of great basic literature. But 9/11. And when you have Obama that touts that this and the Clintons this attack on Benghazi in 9/11 2012, that was because of some guy that made an amateur film about Islam in America. Which is a blatant lie, because 9/11 here has a significance. If we go back to 1565, and I know this might sound a little boring, but 1565, think 1620, which is when the first settlers got to America. This is just a few years before the first settlers got to America. In 1565, Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent, and that's his own designation, dominated the Mediterranean with intentions of not only taking Sicily, Sardinia, Majorca, and southern Spain, but Rome itself. That is really important, because Rome is the crown jewel in the Western Roman Empire after they've taken Constantinople, which was the Eastern Roman Empire. And we talked about this on a previous show.
Now known as Istanbul, ladies and gentlemen.
Exactly, Istanbul, which is now modern day Turkey, and well, you know the rest of that. That used to be the heartland. That used to be the Christian heartland. And we talked about the fall of the Roman Empire in a previous show. You can go back and check that. But in 1565, Sultan Suleiman, he was going to take Rome, and he had to do that in steps. He had to take all these island states and nation states that surrounded Rome, and he tried to invade. He sent the Algerian admiral Dragut to Malta with 200 ships and 40,000 Muslim soldiers, including 6,500 elite Janissary troops. And if you see the marching band today, they have roots in this, because the Janissaries played this music as war music. and we adopted it since because it sounds impressive, I suppose. But you know, on Malta they had a knight, and it is this 70-year-old Frenchman, Jean Parisot de la Valette, and he pleads for reinforcements across Europe, and he sends out a plea to defend this. The Muslims they try. They tear down one of the fortresses on Malta to the rubble, but the knights they keep fighting on for Western civilization and Christianity, and finally they killed Dragut, and the Muslims sail away on September 11th, 1565. So that's the first one, but it's not the last one, because you have in earlier that year, in 1529, you had the first siege of Vienna. But the century after, in 1683, the second siege of Vienna started, which is culminated in the Battle of Vienna, and this marked the start of a 15-year-long great Turkish war, and all the Christian forces, with the exception of France, at least at the beginning, fought against this terrible, horrible onslaught against and most of Europe, actually, and Central Europe, even up to Poland. And in 1683, they besieged Vienna, which was the gateway on land to the Roman Empire, to Rome itself, and just in the nick of time, after 2 months being besieged for 2 months, the Polish king Jan Sobieski, which was elected by the people. I like to think of him as that time's Donald Trump. He gathered 81,000 Polish, Austrian, and German troops, and on September 11th, 1683, he led a surprise attack from one of the hills outside Vienna, and he absolutely tore into the Ottoman Turks. He charged with 38,350 cavalry and dragoons, and the most famous of them were the winged hussars. They wore wings, big metal wings with a lot of bird feathers on them, which made a terrible noise as they thundered down the hill towards the city, and they absolutely just tore into the Turkish lines. The Turks, they were absolutely sure that they had taken the city, and they were beaten, and it didn't end very good for that Kara Mustafa, which was the Pasha, the general for the Turkish troops.
No.
He was sent back to Serbia and garroted and beheaded, and his head was sent back to Turkey.
Oh, so much class. Now, for the listeners that go to the show notes, they're not going to get the part that this story doesn't cover. So why don't you fill the audience in on that part?
Yeah, well, you have another, the Battle of Senta, September 11th, 1697, and we of course covered a great deal about the big American onslaught, which is on September 11th, 2001. What this story doesn't cover is the coordinated attack, armed assault, rioting, and arson on the American legation in Benghazi that cost Ambassador J. Christopher Stevens and 3 other Americans their lives on Ansar al-Sharia. And that was perpetrated on 9/11, 2012. And the attack had nothing to do with some amateur film about Islam made in America, as Obama claimed. It had
I can't believe they even,
the fact that it was on 9/11.
I can't believe they tried to do that. I mean, that was the most amateurish political move I've ever seen the Democrat Party do. I mean, at least when Bill Clinton wagged the dog, it was feasible. But the stuff that these guys came up with was just absolutely not even plausible. And one of the things was when the president rightly claimed that Muslims were dancing in the streets, they tried to shoot that down. But I'm going to tell you this, and I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, Norway, but this sounds like Dan Rather on this clip.
Yeah, it's Dan Rather. I think he's on David Letterman's show, if I'm not too badly mistaken. And you have several people there that...
Settle in and listen to this, ladies and gentlemen, remembering all the vitriol from the Republicans and Democrats when the president rightly stated they were dancing.
You know, there were tens of thousands of people around the world celebrating, and several of them were in New York and New Jersey.
It can't be explained.
Are these people happy? Are they joyous now? Are they celebrating?
Oh, absolutely. They're celebrating. God. There's one report, several witnesses who say this happened. They got on the roof of the building to look across. They knew what was going to happen. Yeah. They were waiting for it to happen, and when it happened, they celebrated. They jumped for joy to see this happen. It was a great triumph. It's inconceivable to me and to you, but David, this is what we have to understand as a country. We're not dealing with the kind of thing we dealt with in any war we've ever fought before, because we've never dealt with these kinds of hateful, to the core, evil people.
Suspects who I'm told were cheering on the roof when they saw the plane slam into the trade center. Police were called to the building by other neighbors and found 8 men celebrating, 6 of them tenants in the building. The FBI and other terrorist task force agencies then arrived, and the older investigators on the task force recalled that they had been to this building before, 8 years ago, when the first World Trade Center attack led them to Sheikh Omar Abdul Rahman, whose Jersey City mosque lies between the 2 buildings getting attention today. And the older investigators remembered that suspects who eventually got convicted for the first Trade Center case, followers of Sheikh Rahman, lived in the building where these same 8 men were celebrating the destruction that they saw from the roof. Calling this a hot address, the task force investigators ordered everyone detained. And they saw something else, a model of the Trade Center on the roof, along with sets of binoculars, the kind of model used by an architect or an engineer for a presentation, an investigator told me. They knew, he said, that the planes were going to hit, and they wanted a ringside seat. Remember, part of what motivates Osama bin Laden against the United States, he has told followers, is that the United States put Sheikh Rahman in jail. Bin Laden has said that for that, the U.S. must pay.
Pablo, it's absolutely chilling the fact that they were sitting there waiting, watching, and getting ready to celebrate the fact that the Twin Towers would topple.
We did have some celebrating. That is true. We had pockets of celebration, some in Queens, some in Brooklyn.
How many people?
10, 12, 30, 40.
And those weren't just rumors. Those weren't just reports. You went out and checked them out.
We had one situation in which a candy store owned by a Muslim family was celebrating that day right near a housing development, and the kids in the housing development came in and beat them up. And I think both facts were corroborated to be true. They were celebrating that the towers had come down.
Celebrations in New Jersey. Bernie Carrick, who was the New York City police commissioner during the attacks and was born in New Jersey, confirmed there were reports of celebrations in several New Jersey towns in a phone interview with One America.
There were celebrations in Brooklyn, around Atlantic Avenue, in Queens, Patterson, New Jersey, I think Jersey City as well.
A lot of people, and they were just chanting and raving, and I noticed that they were holding things. They were holding like rocks and sticks, and they were saying "Burn America." And
news reports about Jersey City. They said people were on the roofs watching the planes flying in. They were tipped off prior to the thing, and this was a narrative that was going on. I remember video.
This video from New York radio talk show host Curtis Sliwa.
People celebrating, cheering, when they had actually heard that the World Trade Center had struck.
On Twitter, Sliwa confirmed celebrations took place.
We did have some reports of people celebrating that day while the towers were coming down. But if people were celebrating, he's right about that.
I do have distinct recollection of having reported to me by the police
a number of incidents. And over the years, I've had people report to me things like that there were celebrations. I had a person call me today and tell me that his friend was in a cab and the Muslim cab driver was celebrating when he heard about it.
So the only mistake...
There were a couple of these incidents where the Muslims were celebrating and people attacked them. People, in other words, interchanged with them. Because there certainly were celebrations.
So when Chris Christie said that there were not...
Well, I think this is...
Or he didn't recall it.
This is getting... I understand.
You know what? And Brett, I actually remember things like that. I remember, because I live one town away from one of the towns where there, according to my neighbors, they saw it with their own two eyes, there were people celebrating. And I also remember there was video on television. I don't know that it was from that town or from New Jersey, but nonetheless, Donald Trump says that there are a lot of people out there who have verified the idea of his story.
Yes, people were celebrating in some number in New Jersey,
right?
Some and in the United States. Most attacks. Did it happen in New Jersey? Of course.
All right, so there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. It was obviously it happened. I remember seeing it. Norway remembers seeing it, at least overseas. But tonight, the audience question: how do you remember 9/11/2001? 412-567-1460. We blocked off this last segment of the program so you can give us a call, and we want to know. You all have personal stories. I've seen some of them out there in the chat room. Share them with the rest of the audience. Now's your chance, and we are running out of time, so you don't have a real big window, but we'd love you to call in.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, everybody's got a personal story. Where were you? What did you do? What did you think? I mean, I was really stressed that week because my father died 3 days later on 9/14. So I remember that week as a nightmarish week. But I'm sure everybody knows where they were, what they were doing. So call the show, 412-567-1460. And History B, my good friend in the chat room, she wrote something that is so true. They want us to forget all of this.
Yeah, and never do that. That's why I played the raw clips. And if you go to the Facebook page, there's many more where that came from. And I mean, they talk about jumpers and everything else. Let's go to Missouri and talk to JB, who is on the line. JB, good evening.
Good evening. I was calling in to just kind of say a few things. First, God bless our 911 families. They went through a hell none of us really understand. And I was actually working second shift in those days, and I actually was asleep when the whole thing happened, and woke up and saw the replays and was just shocked. But we had a run on the gas pumps in our town, and everyone was panicking. And I remember one of our coworkers was frantic because he said, I don't have enough gas to get home to my kids tonight. And I just tried to calm him because I've been in the military and I knew that they weren't hitting any fuel facilities or anything, and I just assured him, hey, they'll ramp up production, and sure enough, that's what they did. We had no problem getting fuel that night. One thing that happened the next weekend that I remember vividly was we had a couple of National Guard guys come in, and they were just beat, and their knuckles were just raw, just broken. And so I just kind of leaned over to one of them and said, so they let you do it for real this time? And he had the biggest grin on his face because they were finally going to let the military take it serious. And that's something that they hadn't done up to that point.
No, that's very true, JB. I'll tell you, there was a lot of things changed about the military, especially in the Guard and the Reserve that day. Mm-hmm. I mean, the Guard and the Reserve had been held. Well, obviously, the National Guard took care of domestic state problems, but as far as internationally and globally, the Guard and the Reserve actually became part of the United States Army that day.
Right.
They had held us in reserve to go to war with the Russians. We were in the wood line with our faces painted for all those years, and all of a sudden we were getting deployed.
Exactly, and it was for real. It wasn't we'll fill out forms and we'll kind of go around and run around in the woods and, do some land nav and, not really much else. This time they were actually training how to defend themselves to the brink of death.
Absolutely.
And it changed. I saw in those young men, the eyes changed. It was a pride that they finally were going to be able to do what they wanted to do, which is defend our country.
And then we went out there in Iraq, and the Democrats got elected, and we gave it all back. Thanks for calling, JB. We appreciate it.
God bless.
All right, so that was JB, and we are running out of time, Norway, so I will say, how can people get in touch with you on social media?
I am at Norway for Trump on Twitter and Gab, and that is Norway 4 with a number 4. And I would urge everybody to go and check out this story we have in the show notes. Did America Surrender on 9/11 by the American thinker? It's a great author, Shari Goodman, that's written it, and it's absolutely down to the T. It's perfect. It talks about President Bush. Standing with Nihad Awad, the founder of CARE, declaring that Islam is a religion of peace. Absolutely disgusting.
Sons of Norway, Radio Norway translation.
Sønner av Norge.
Beautiful music. Thanks for coming, Norway. Great show as usual on this very serious of nights for everybody in the world that loves freedom. I'm Hutch Bailey Jr. on Facebook, Berg's Eye View on Twitter. I want to thank everybody in the chat room and podcast listeners. If you can get to the live shows, you will really enjoy this chat room. I'll tell you, they make me proud every time we come on the air. Don't go anywhere. The Wayne Dupree Show is coming up next. I'm getting ready to jump in the helicopter and go over there. This has been your Shaping Our World episode Monday, commemoration of 9/11. And some different angles on that, and also Norway's election results coming up tomorrow. Jack and I will helm the show. I got to get him permissions for the show notes folder, though. Hey, like I said before, Wayne Dupree Show coming up next. Thanks for letting us into your life for 1 hour. God bless.
God bless.